Do you ever wonder if our modern social customs have made us unwittingly more susceptible to the threat of our ancient adversaries, the ones that have been our hidden cohabitants since the dawn of humanity? I was startled by a firm knock at my front door, just as dusk settled over the neighborhood. I felt a tremor of unease as I crossed the living room to answer it. A solitary figure stood on my porch, backlit by the fading twilight. A strikingly handsome man with an air of casual confidence. "Good evening," he said with a warm smile. "I'm new to the area, and it seems I've gotten myself a bit turned around. Could you perhaps help me with directions?" His voice was smooth as velvet, disarming in its friendliness. But there was an undercurrent of something else beneath the polished delivery, an intensity in those piercing eyes that unsettled me. "Of course," I replied, against my better judgment. "Where were you headed?" He tilted his head slightly, holding my gaze a moment too long. "Just looking for the downtown area. A wrong turn or two is all it took to get myself utterly lost, I'm afraid." I gave him cross-street directions, but he didn't turn to leave right away. An uncomfortable silence stretched out between us, thickening the air with some indefinable tension. He took a casual step forward. "If it's not too much trouble, could I trouble you for a glass of water? It's been a dreadfully long drive." My instincts screamed to refuse, to shut the door tight, but his soft tone and easy charisma disarmed me. Surely one man alone could mean no harm, I thought to myself, despite the crawling sense of unease prickling my nerves. "Of course, please come in," I heard myself say, as though disconnected with my rational judgment. "Most kind you are. Thank you for allowing me into your home." Something about the way he said that last part caused the hairs on the back of my neck to stand up. But his charming demeanor quickly put me at ease, and I opened the door wider, stepping back to allow him to enter. He slipped through the door without waiting, the scent of his crisp cologne enveloping me as he brushed past. I struggled against the trance his presence seemed to weave. I headed to the kitchen as he made himself comfortable on the sofa. As I filled a glass from the tap, I noticed my hands were trembling slightly. I took a deep breath, willing myself to relax. "Don't be so foolish," I chided myself. "Nothing to be anxious about." I returned to find him admiring a family photo on the bookshelf, his eyes gliding over the familiar faces of my loved ones. "You have a beautiful home," he mused, accepting the drink with a courteous nod of thanks. "It has such warmth. Quite welcoming, really." I muttered an awkward thanks, suppressing a shudder at the subtle emphasis he put on that word, welcoming. From there, a peculiar shift seemed to take hold, one so gradual and insidious that I didn't even recognize it until it was far too late. As the hours stretched on, he nursed his glass of water with paradoxical slowness, despite my tacit cues that his welcome had passed. "You know, it's grown dreadfully late," he remarked once the sky had long turned ink black outside the windows. "And I'd hate to be out wandering strange streets at night in my present disoriented state." His eyes glided meaningfully toward the hallway leading to the spare bedroom, allowing an artfully awkward pause to dangle his unspoken request to remain overnight. "I couldn't possibly impose," he demurred with a self-deprecating chuckle, carefully masking the glint of certainty that he would, in fact, be doing precisely that. There was an undercurrent of command beneath the polite veneer, a sense that rebuffing his query was not truly an option. I wavered, every self-preserving instinct screaming to refuse, to stand firm and eject this smooth-talking stranger from my home before matters went any further awry. But the words shriveled on my tongue, rendered impotent by the subtle alchemy of his unsettlingly charismatic poise. I suppose it's dreadfully late to be getting turned around again." I heard myself relenting with a sickly lurch of disbelief. "The spare room is made up if you'd like." "You have my gratitude." He cut me off with an insistent smile, already rising fluidly to his feet and trailing a proprietary hand along the spines of my bookshelves as he headed down the hall. Before I realized it, he deftly insinuated himself into my daily comings and goings. Yet, He remained unfailingly polite, so amiably personable that I couldn't bring myself to object to his outstaying his welcome. An undercurrent of unease rippled through me, but his very presence possessed an alluring, nearly hypnotic quality that dissolved any defiance. Perhaps it was his luxurious voice and refined enunciation as we conversed over cups of steaming Earl Grey, meticulously prepared at his insistence. Maybe it stemmed from his seemingly inexhaustible knowledge and philosophical insights during our discussions over world literature and historic arts that I so enjoyed. Gradually, without even marking the progression, his integration into my world became total. He grew so immutably intertwined into the fabric of my routine that I no longer could envision this space, my comings and goings, without his presence woven inextricably alongside. He became a seamless part of my world, and that, perhaps more than anything, sealed my utter undoing. Because it wasn't until the dead of one chilly midnight that the cruel game he'd been playing finally dawned on me in full. I awoke to the paralyzing realization that I was no longer the master of my own domain, but an obliviously willing host harboring something evil. As my eyes fluttered open, his towering silhouette dominated my field of view, stark against the moonlight spilling through the window. The polished marble of his chiseled features seemed to almost glow in the darkness. My breath seized in my lungs as his pale lips parted in a terrible half-smile. In that moment, the beguiling charisma had shed its human facade completely, leaving only the ravening predator behind those obsidian depths. "You fought admirably against my influence," his rich baritone reverberated against the walls, carrying a lilt of dark amusement. "But in the end, your mind proved just as fragile." Despite the cryptic words, an icy dread lanced my core as his true motivations became terribly clear. This was no chance encounter, but something more insidious lying in wait all along. A tremor racked my frame as he leaned forward, one frigid hand extending to trace the line of my jugular with disturbing tenderness. I could feel the feather-light scrape of sharpened nails against my flesh as his fingers trailed downward, reminding me who was rendered helpless beneath his dominion in this place. "To never extend hospitality to the unknown," he tisked in mild admonishment, "spoken of through fable and folklore alike. And yet you, modern mind, disregard the wisdom as mere myth. We've walked among you since the dawn of your civilization, you know, cloaked in fable and shadow, to be sure, but never merely confined to story." The unnatural chill of his touch froze me as his words slithered like noxious serpents through my numbing mind. His kind, here all along, dwelling within our oldest tales and subconscious? A sickening lurch churned within me as the full implications crystallized. He brushed my forehead in a parody of perverse intimacy, the predatory glint in his obsidian stare rendering the tender facade obscene. Jagged ivory fangs descended as it engulfed my world in an eternal darkness. Yet the true terror lingered in the harrowing realization that my thoughtless invitation had simply unveiled the perverse truth as old as humanity itself. We were never alone to begin with. The obscene secret had been lurking all along, just beneath the surface.